马克思在他的《资本论》里讲到，因为资本追逐利润的动机，造成它会迅速的扩张。会扩张到全球，
In his Das
这样
Kapital,
生产
his
就会
book,
过剩。
Karl Marx said that because of the drive to pursue profit, capital expand globally, which will ultimately lead to excess capacity. And the current financial crisis actually is a full testimony to that the excess leverage ratios in the financial sector has led to an excess expansion of capital, which then give rise to excess capacity, or which then exacerbate the excess capacity globally. I think that we're going to live with the low growth rate of the world economy for many years to come. But we should not stop our steps at this critical moment. We should continue to move on. I think that many problems or issues that we have faced, particularly the issues that we faced a few decades ago, were pretty much similar to the problems and issues that our friends here are facing today. The very primary accumulation of capital for industrialization of China was also through the extraction of minerals. We have evolved from primary processing of raw materials gradually to the deep processing of these materials, yet even today, the technique and level of advancement of our deep processing is still lagging behind those of the West. Take the deep processing of rare earth, for example. China is actually exporting 90% of the world's rare earth. However, China still lags behind in terms of deep processing of some of the rare earths materials. And we still need to rely on the import of some of the composites of rare earth. Of course, after 30 years of reform and opening up, we are able to deep process many of the materials by ourselves. While we were conducting the processing of these raw materials or minerals, which were capital intensive, we discovered that they were solely capital intensive. They were not labor intensive. However, we still had 1.3 billion people, and more than 800 million of whom live in the rural places. We need to create jobs for them. At the time, multinational corporations of the world were relocating their processing and value chains, and therefore we took that opportunity to attract many of those multinationals to put their processes in China. So that's why today you see that more than 40 million people are working for those processing factories or mills. And if you consider those that provide accessories and supporting equipment to these companies, then there are around or nearly 100 million people in China engaging in processing trade. Let's take the iPhone and iPad of Apple, for example. 90% of these products were finally assembled in China. So we now reckon that as our labor costs continues to rise, we need to relocate some of the processes or processing industries to foreign countries, including the production of labor-intensive clothing, footwear, and suitcases, etc. If you have the chance to visit some of the ASEAN countries recently, you will find that many firms or processing factories and mills were set up by Chinese private business people. Some of these factories actually hire more than 4,000 to 5,000 people. So we are now wondering whether or not we can replicate that experience to Africa as well, because we will never forget the day when the African friends took us or carried us into the United Nations. So we're looking for some countries that has stable political stability as well as a hard-working population to serve as a gateway or a window for our exploration. So the moment I set my foot on this beautiful land and meeting with the beautiful people here, I was deeply impressed, and I thought that we could discuss this with the Namibian people. If you could leave an area around 8 to 10 kilometers when you expand the Walvis Bay port and develop that area into a modern industrial and logistic and processing park, you can actually process products there and re-export them to the other parts of the world. By doing that, you can not just create jobs for the young people, but also increase government tax revenue and improve the competitiveness of your economy. So I think that my colleagues and I today in this country are taking a first step in exploring these opportunities. We look forward to more in-depth discussion about these opportunities going forward. I apologize for turning this beautiful dinner into something like a working dinner. But last but not least, I would like to wish everybody a happy Chinese New Year.
最后，我预祝我的纳米比亚的朋友们新年快乐，中国的新年快乐。